Bryce Dallas Howard just addressed a popular fan complaint about The Mandalorian. This is not something I personally had, but I have seen it many times, and Bryce, amazing as always, has responded to these criticisms. Now before we dive into it, my dear friends, thank you so much for being part of this community. It means the world to me. And if you haven't done so already, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down below, hit the bell for notifications, and if you want to support what I do, the link to my Patreon is down below. Tons of videos you cannot find here on YouTube, you will not regret it. So no more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into the news. When we watch TV shows like The Mandalorian, we often think, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? We love to speculate. I myself produce fan theories, I post them on YouTube, that's what I love to do, but that is not the aspect we're focusing on today, because Bryce Dallas Howard hit us with a bit of a reality check, because a more common criticism, not just for The Mandalorian, I've seen this across Star Wars TV shows, maybe with the exception of Andor Season 1, is that the episodes are too short. Why don't they make them longer? Why do they end exactly when we're just getting into it? Well, Bryce, amazing as always, has really worded it perfectly. In a new interview on the podcast Blah Blah Blah, she joined Katie Sackhoff to talk about Mando, the process of bringing the show to life, the creative process, and Howard stated that it's such a fun experience, but there's a reason why episodes are so short. And the lowdown is, they require so many people to make them possible. This is something we take for granted. Of course, there are huge budgets on these shows, but it's also a lot to bring certain things to life, whether it's the visual effects, but let Bryce Dallas Howard elaborate on this. She says this, it's so fun to get to be part of stories like Spider-Man, because it's very meaningful to people, but also because it requires so many people to achieve it. And the kind of animatronics, the mix of visual effects, practical effects, cinema, performance, and so many different kinds of people need to come together in order for it to work. Engineers and artists. And it's really amazing when it does all work. So then after she says this, Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan herself, then chimes in and talks specifically about The Mandalorian, because Bryce was drawing upon her experience on Spider-Man, Jurassic World, but here's the bit about Mando. And it works, Katie says. That's why I tell people that Mando is like, they're always so confused why it takes so long for us to shoot, and why the episodes are, in their minds, so short. And I'm like, there are so many moving parts to this that you have no idea. For context, Season 1 of Mando has an average runtime of 39 minutes, and I believe the shortest in Season 1, just in Season 1, is The Child. Season 2's average length was 40, and Season 3 was a bit longer, 42.5 minutes per episode. That's just the average. Following the release of each batch of episodes, one of the more major complaints from fans is those runtimes, with many believing that they should be closer to an hour in length. But Katie Sackhoff reminds us that is not exactly how TV shows work, not when you're doing Star Wars, which is kind of why Chapter 19, The Convert, which was a very entertaining episode but many didn't like it, that was the one on Coruscant, focused on Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, was so long, a 56-minute runtime, and the logistics of each episode is going to be different. No two episodes are the same, but when you're talking about stunts, androids, and so many other factors, what's in certain scenes, if you look at Chapter 22, Guns for Hire, they used a full room of droids, and that itself took hours upon hours to make, because each puppeteer had like 3 or 4 droids in their hands. I will talk about that a different time, but Sackhoff goes on to say, we're lucky that we finish as fast as we do. We're rushed all the time, and the fact we finish is crazy. So it kind of feels as though when they're on set, when they're in the moment, a lot of things take time. Rome was not built in a day. And sometimes, especially with the stunt scenes, if you think back to Bo-Katan versus Ex-Woves, with the actors doing certain stunts and different stunt people getting the right shots, the right angles, getting it coordinated just right, she says that takes a lot of physicality, a lot of energy. The reason there's the illusion that it was easy is because we as fans watch it back afterwards, when it's all edited in, when it's all done, and so then we can say, well, why isn't this episode longer? Well, there are deadlines to meet, and it does require patience, at least according to Katie Sackhoff and Bryce Dallas Howard. So how does The Mandalorian's runtime affect the momentum? Well, honestly, I've not been one to complain about runtimes. I think The Mandalorian, especially compared to most Disney Plus shows, has been paced absolutely fantastically, even if I don't agree with every creative decision, even if I prefer some episodes over others. I've never sat there and thought, well, this should be a bit longer or this should be a bit shorter. I think it's been just right. I know fans will have varying opinions on that though. I know there are fans who say some episodes should be shorter than others or longer than others or whatever it is, but when you take into consideration the substance of the episodes, creatives who write the shows and who direct the shows, and all of the cast and crew, the aim is never to hit the hour mark. The story comes first, as we've seen with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's work. Now, when it comes to Star Wars Ahsoka, which now is so close, Dave Filoni admitted he wrote those episodes to be longer than Mando generally speaking, but it's not because he was sitting there thinking, how can I drag this out to 59 or 60 minutes? He was thinking about the story, and that's what I love about creatives who care about their craft, who care about the narrative. It's not to meet a quota of runtime, it's to tell the story in the most effective way possible. If anything, being concise and narrowing things down is more effective when it comes to TV. When you're doing a film, it's a different process, and that is something that Bryce Dallas Howard gets absolutely spot on. The fact the process can be grueling and drag on and on and on, even if it's just to get one shot. As I say in the droid bar scene in season 3, it was only a few minutes on screen, but they spent hours and days trying to perfect it, getting the various droids in the right places, getting the movements right because not everything was animatronic, so in a way it's really good to hear her explain this. Now, Bryce Dallas Howard I will always defend because I think she's one of the people at Lucasfilm who really understands what makes Star Wars great. Her episode of the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian season 2 were absolutely mind-blowing, and say what you will about Guns for Hire, the directing was fine, but the story itself was not up to her, and I've got to say she chose a rather challenging episode to begin with. And you know, I've noticed when it comes to history repeating itself in the Star Wars fandom, fans criticised a lot of the weird alien aspects of the prequel trilogy when it came out, and I think that's going to be the same case with The Mandalorian. But I think you'll find Plaisir 15 might be important. I think there was a purpose to telling the story of Plaisir 15 becoming an ally to Bo-Katan and Din and the people of Mandalore. Now that the home was reunited, they might need those allies, and just at face value, I must admit it's a lot more fun the second time round. But going back to the point, Bryce puts this very concisely. To say that visual and practical effects take time is an understatement. I mean, just when it comes to certain outfits, if you look at the Snovian bartender, getting that right, getting the makeup and prosthetics of everyone, it's so much more complex. And the same goes for the pirates and all of the other creatures from season 3. I know Bryce Dallas Howard is in close proximity with those at Lucasfilm, especially working on the Ahsoka show. I don't believe she directed. I know we have Peter Ramsey, Steph Green, Jennifer Getzinger, Geeta Patel, and Rick Famuyiwa, but I don't think Bryce was on that list. Either way, she's been hyping the series, and it seems like those who worked around Dave Filoni, who wrote all the episodes, seem to have great faith in him. And last year, Bryce was the first to say the Ahsoka show is going to be a Star Wars Clone Wars fans' absolute dream. I really hope we see Bryce return to direct in The Mandalorian season 4, and I'll never stop saying I do think she deserves her own slice of the Star Wars universe in the form of a film, maybe a trilogy or something like that. I brought this up once and some fans said she's not ready for that, she should stick to the shows. But I've got to say Bryce Dallas Howard is more talented than people ever give her credit for. And just listen to what she says in the behind the scenes. She herself was a prequels fan when she was 16. She was on set with George Lucas and she saw what was going on, so she does have a better understanding than she gets credit for. But let me know your thoughts on what she said and what Katie Sackhoff said in the comments down below. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree? If you enjoyed this video, guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.